February 5th, 1988. It's Friday night and the WWF are on network television. Saturday night's main event on NBC had been a great success for both the WWF and the network, and so a spin-off was created for Friday nights. And this is the inaugural event known simply as the main event. The live broadcast drew a 15.2 TV rating, attracting around 33 million viewers, setting records for American televised wrestling that still has never been broken and, in all likelihood, it never will be broken. Recently we looked at the first Saturday night's main event, and in that video we looked at the creation of the show, why Dick Ebersol wanted the WWF on NBC, and the impact Saturday night's main event had in terms of bringing wrestling into the homes of people who may never have been previously exposed to the WWF brand. And something I found interesting after uploading that video was how people's comments matched exactly what the WWF were trying to achieve with the Saturday night's main event network TV show. I saw so many comments about how the first Saturday night's main event felt like a pay-per-view for some viewers who didn't have cable, comments about the excitement fans had when wrestling came on instead of Saturday Night Live, and there's a ton of comments with people describing how they felt while watching the event, who they watched Saturday night's main event with, the playground discussions the following Monday. There's an incredible amount of nostalgia in that comment section, and I thought that was great to see. If that first show drew an 8.8 and the main event drew a 15.2, then I'm seriously hoping to read a ton of similar comments with people telling similar stories in regards to the first ever main event show on NBC. As a fan from the UK, the distribution of pro wrestling in the United States during this time period is very interesting to me, and reading your stories about the general experience of watching these shows for the first time really helps me in understanding how important these shows were. But anyway, enough of that, let's start the video. This is the main event, the most watched American wrestling show in the history of television. To quickly recap, WWF The Main Event was a spin-off of Saturday Night's Main Event. Also airing on NBC, The Main Event was unique not only because it was on network television, but unlike Saturday Night's Main Event, The Main Event was on prime time television. It was a big deal. NBC noticed how good the numbers were when Saturday Night's Main Event replaced Saturday Night Live. WrestleMania IV was also a massive success in terms of pay-per-view buys, so the decision was made to give the WWF a primetime television slot to see how well they could do. Needless to say, the pressure must have been immense for this one. In total, there were 5 main event shows that aired on Friday nights. The one we're looking at today featuring Hulk Hogan vs Andre the Giant. The second episode aired 1 year later, and the big match of that show featured the Mega Powers taking on Akeem and the Big Boss Man. Main Event 3 happened in February 1990, and that one featured Hulk Hogan vs Randy Savage and The Ultimate Warrior vs Dino Bravo. The Main Event 4 was a taped show that aired in November 1990, and it featured Mr. Perfect vs the Big Boss Man and The Ultimate Warrior vs Ted DiBiase. This one also had the infamous Hart Foundation vs Rockers tag team title match that didn't make it to TV because of a broken ring rope, causing the Rockers to hand back the tag titles they just won and pretend the whole thing didn't happen. And then the final main event show aired on February 1st, 1991, and that one featured Hulk Hogan and Tugboat vs Earthquake and Dino Bravo. The final show drew a 6.7 rating, and this was seen as a failure. Imagine that. There's a mixture of good and bad here admittedly, but the event we're looking at today, the first ever WWF main event, is easily one of the most well remembered episodes. Those of you who already know what happens during this show will probably remember this one quite fondly. And for those who clicked on the video to learn about this show and have no idea about what matches took place, well, you're in for a treat here, although I'm guessing the majority of you watching this video will remember the first main event quite well. Today we're just going to look at the WWE Network version of the show, as the original broadcast doesn't have anything extra included. The network release actually has more footage, but we'll talk about that in a moment. The Main Event 1 took place inside the Market Square Arena in Indianapolis, Indiana. The live attendance for the show has never been confirmed, but it looks close to a sellout. The main event takes place after the 1988 Royal Rumble and before WrestleMania IV, but before looking at the matches that took place on the main event show, we really need to take a look at the Royal Rumble as well. Basically, the 1988 Royal Rumble on the USA Network and not on pay-per-view was used to promote the main event on NBC, and this gives you an idea of how important the Friday night NBC show was to the WWF. During the Rumble event, a contract signing took place for Hulk Hogan vs Andre the Giant, a big WrestleMania rematch that was going to take place on the first ever main event show on NBC. Ted DiBiase had tried to purchase the WWF Championship, and good guy Hulk Hogan isn't about the money, brother, so the Hulkster refused. This leads to Ted DiBiase buying Andre the Giant, the plan here being that Andre would defeat Hogan at the main event and Andre would then hand over the WWF Championship to the $1 Million Man. The contract signing was quite intense, if a contract signing could ever be described as intense, with Andre taking his sweet time to sit at the table and Hulk Hogan keeping an eye on the big man with a real look of concern. Andre also makes the table and chairs look like a little kid's playset once he finally sits down to put pen to paper. DiBiase says Hogan must be getting cold feet and maybe the Hulkster should have taken the $1 Million Man's generous offer. DiBiase then calls the paper that Hogan signs a career-ending contract. Andre makes Hogan sweat it out. He takes his sweet time reading over the contract as an anxious Hulkster looks on, and after signing his name, the two men square off. It ends with Hogan getting his head smashed on the table, and Andre flips the table on top of the Hulkster. That wasn't all though. Hulk Hogan cut a promo after the Royal Rumble match where the main event was once again given more promotion. The Hulkster said in order to beat Hulkamania, Andre the Giant will have to beat each and every Hulkamaniac in attendance. Andre also cut a promo afterwards. It wasn't before the main event of the evening, it wasn't after. It was right in the middle of the Royal Rumble's main event match, the Islanders versus the Young Stallions. This was a 2 out of 3 falls bout, and Andre and DiBiase spoke on the mic after the first fall. You can actually see Haku and Tama standing in the ring waiting for the promo to end. Hogan vs Andre was the big draw of the main event, but another big match taking place at the show featured Macho Man Randy Savage getting a shot at the Honky Tonk Man's Intercontinental Championship. On Saturday night's main event back in October, Savage and Honky Tonk Man had a match and it ended when the Hart Foundation attacked Savage, leading to Miss Elizabeth going backstage and finding Hulk Hogan, thus creating the Mega Powers team. Savage's team defeated Honky Tonk Man's team at the first ever Survivor Series. The Honky Tonk Man decided to walk away from the match and get himself counted out, and from there, the rivalry continued on. Savage vs Honky Tonk Man at the main event would be the last high profile match these two would have during this feud, although they did compete in a few tag team cage matches just before WrestleMania IV. So fans tuning into the main event were going to see an IC title match, a WWF title match, and there was also a tag team title match that took place, Strikeforce defending against the Hart Foundation, although NBC cut the show off while the tag match was still in progress. Thanks to the WWE Network, we were able to see how that match ended, although it's completely rushed. The competitors hoped to get the match on TV by going straight to the finish more or less, but it still didn't make it. But that's enough background. Let's take a look at the show itself and let's see how the WWF did on Friday night primetime television. 33 million viewers tuned in to see this show, keep that in mind. The show opens up with Randy Savage, Honky Tonk Man, Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan cutting quick promos talking about their matches.
Hulkamania will never die!
The intro is all centered around the 4 competitors competing in the IC and WWF title matches. It looks incredibly dated now, but you can tell they tried to put in a bit more effort here in comparison to other shows at the time. Jesse Ventura and Vince McMahon provide commentary this evening. Jesse Ventura says Andre has waited a year to get his hands on the WWF Championship and Hulk Hogan, and Ventura predicts a victory for the big man. McMahon says we're going to see a special training video that shows the Hulkster getting prepared for his match with Andre. Jesse doesn't really want to see it, but then the video plays anyway. Basically, it's Hulk Hogan working out with Jake the Snake Roberts' eventual theme music playing in the background. It feels like it goes on for way too long, but the faces Hogan pulls while working out are absolutely fantastic. Building up those pythons looks like a lot of hard work. Our opening contest is Honky Tonk Man vs Randy Savage for the Intercontinental Championship, and we get an interview with Honky Tonk Man and Jimmy Hart before the matchup. The IC champ says he has the title, he has the belt, all he needs now is the girl, so tonight he plans on taking Miss Elizabeth away from Randy Savage. Honky Tonk Man says he's gonna take Elizabeth to the Heartbreak Hotel. He won't be cruel because he knows Miss Elizabeth wants him to love her tender, and Honky Tonk Man will be her teddy bear. As for that hound dog Randy Savage, he's gonna be in the ghetto. The Honky Tonk Man goes to the ring, he has a little dance with Peggy Sue, and then Mean Gene interviews Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth. Mean Gene reminds Savage that he's going to be performing tonight in front of the largest television audience in WWF history. Randy says Elizabeth has nothing to worry about tonight. Honky Tonk Man's words are just fuel to the fire. The world's going to see Randy Savage beat the Honky Tonk Man tonight, and the Macho Man will have vengeance. The audience gives a huge pop for Randy and Elizabeth as they make their way down to the ring, and here we go, the first match is finally underway. Honky Tonk Man tries to impress Elizabeth with his sick dance moves, but Savage chases him out of the ring. Randy catches his opponent on the outside, he delivers an elbow, and the punishment continues when the action gets inside the ropes. The IC champ goes to the outside after taking a back elbow, and Savage smashes Jimmy Hart and Honky Tonk Man's heads together. Vince McMahon calls this a brainbuster. Savage then warns Jimmy Hart to stay out of the match, but Jimmy doesn't pay attention and he helps Honky Tonk Man get the upper hand almost immediately afterwards. Honky Tonk Man tries a sunset flip, but Savage counters it with a right hand. And then we see 3 Irish whip reversals when Savage tries to throw the champ into the turnbuckles. Honky Tonk Man fails to capitalise, and so Jimmy Hart again tries to distract Savage. Savage chases Jimmy into the ring and the Macho Man falls right into a trap. Jimmy leaves his megaphone for Honky Tonk Man to use as a weapon, but the cameras miss the shot. Instead we see Jimmy Hart fucking around on the ring ropes. Honky Tonk pins Savage, Savage kicks out at 2, and so the IC champ wrenches on the challenger's neck in hopes of getting a submission victory. Savage fights out, he hits a shoulder block, but Honky Tonk manages to land a knee strike and Savage falls out of the ring. After landing a double axe handle from the apron to the outside, Honky Tonk Man throws Savage back into the ring and he shakes his hips at Miss Elizabeth. From here, it's all Honky Tonk Man. Jimmy Hart continues to get in cheap shots while the champion tries to lure in Miss Elizabeth with more sick dance moves. The crowd chants for Savage as they try to cheer their favourite back into the match, and it briefly works. Savage comes back with a few strikes, but he goes down after another knee strike and a clothesline. Jimmy Hart is now confident that this one is all but over as Honky Tonk Man drops a few elbows on Savage. Elizabeth, on the other hand, looks very concerned. Honky Tonk then makes his move on Elizabeth and he begins creeping on the outside. Elizabeth finds herself surrounded by Peggy Sue, Jimmy Hart and Honky Tonk Man, but thankfully Savage runs out and Miss Elizabeth gets saved. The Intercontinental Champion begs for mercy when Savage brings the fight back into the ring, but Savage is all fired up. Honky Tonk Man gets thrown out of the ring and Savage lands his double axe handle from the top rope to the outside. Honky Tonk Man sold this brilliantly. Randy performs a body slam back inside the ropes and he lands another double axe handle. Honky Tonk kicks out at 2 and Jimmy Hart jumps on the apron. Savage brings Hart into the ring and Honky Tonk Man ends up accidentally hitting Jimmy with a running knee. Peggy Sue then starts giving Elizabeth some trouble on the outside and Savage is forced to intervene. This of course gives the champion a chance to take advantage, but Randy has it scouted and the Honky Tonk Man gets thrown into the ring post. You get so engrossed in what's going on that you completely forget about a possible countout, but this is exactly what happens. Savage gets back into the ring and Honky Tonk Man gets counted out. Savage wins the match, but not the IC title. The champion isn't happy with how things went down, so he grabs his guitar. He and Savage circle the ring for a bit, but then Jimmy Hart hits Savage with his megaphone. The Honky Tonk Man goes to strike Savage, but Elizabeth jumps in. She's prepared to take the hit for Savage, but Randy wakes up and he takes the guitar away. The Honky Tonk Man escapes the ring, Savage destroys the guitar, the crowd loved this by the way, and Randy lifts Elizabeth on his shoulder to wrap up the match. Vince says Savage's real trophy is Elizabeth, he doesn't need the Intercontinental Championship, and the audience goes nuts for the Macho Man and Miss Elizabeth as the main event moves on to its next match. Bigger things were on the horizon for Macho Man Randy Savage. Vince McMahon and Jesse Ventura give us a history lesson next. We learn about the Hulk Hogan vs Andre rivalry and how Ted DiBiase bought Andre in an attempt to get his hands on the WWF Championship. We've already covered all this, but what I didn't mention is the fact that the Giant choked Hogan on the previous episode of Saturday Night's Main Event. Jesse Ventura also says that the WrestleMania III Hogan vs Andre match outcome is disputed, as it looked like Andre pinned Hogan for a 3 count after a failed body slam attempt. Vince McMahon argues that there was no 3 count here. Ted DiBiase says afterwards that Andre the Giant won the match at WrestleMania III. Hulk Hogan is small change compared to the Giant. Hogan's account is overdrawn, and tonight, Andre is going to close it. Andre says once he gets his hands on Hogan tonight, he's going to twist and squeeze and he isn't going to stop. Andre, DiBiase and Virgil then make their way down to the ring as Mean Gene interviews the Hulkster backstage, and there's a few painfully obvious giveaways here that this promo was pre-recorded and not live. Hogan says Andre only had him down for a 2 count at WrestleMania, so that argument holds no weight. And as for Ted DiBiase, well, Hogan and the Hulkamaniacs have entered into a lifelong profit-sharing plan. If Virgil's going to look out for the referee's count tonight, then the Hulkamaniacs are going to look out for Ted DiBiase trying to interfere, and then all Hogan has to do is beat Andre and Hulkamania will last forever. Sounds like a wonderful plan. Hogan then makes his entrance, and can you spot the differences? Hogan is wearing the new Winged Eagle WWF Championship belt, and he's also now wearing a headband instead of his bandana. Clearly, the WWF weren't taking any chances with those pre-match promos, and you can't blame them either. Hogan rips off his shirt as Real American plays in the arena. The fans love Hulk Hogan here, and the Hulkster looks all pumped up. Andre, meanwhile, looks cool and collected. We don't need to talk much about Andre's health here, as we all know the big man's best days were behind him at this point, but Andre still had an incredible presence. And the fact that he just stands there, zero emotion, looking at Hulk as the champion goes through his usual routine, I think it's pretty good. Andre is here to take the belt. He isn't here to please anybody but himself and Ted DiBiase. Hogan attacks Virgil and DiBiase before the match properly begins. Both men get brought into the ring and they both take a big boot and the arena completely pops. Once DiBiase and Virgil are out of the ring, the Hulkster goes to work on the Giant. Hogan does a good job of dazing Andre, and the big man even misses a big punch, allowing Hogan to keep the pressure on. Andre takes everything Hogan throws at him and he still stays on his feet. The Hulkster tries ramming Andre's head into the turnbuckles. He throws a few chops, a few punches, a running forearm, and all it does is daze the big man. He won't fall down. A clothesline seemingly does no damage at all to the challenger, and Hogan can do nothing but keep trying. In contrast, Virgil goes down after one punch, highlighting how difficult it is for Hogan to do any kind of damage to his biggest ever challenger. Hulk stomps on Ted DiBiase and cash flies in the air. Hogan goes back to attacking Andre and the Hulkster decides to fight dirty. Andre gets his eyes raked in the corner and Hulk lands a running clothesline afterwards. Another right hand, another rake to the face. People will complain or at least highlight how Andre is practically doing nothing here and he's maybe too limited to be in a match like this. But watch the match back with the sound on and try to say the crowd doesn't love it. It's all building up to Andre eventually falling and it's working well. Hulk goes to the top rope but Andre grabs him by the throat. All this time Hulk was trying to bring Andre down, but it's Andre who ends up slamming Hogan to the mat. Andre then puts himself to the mat when he misses a headbutt. The Hulkster goes for the pin but Andre chokes Hogan. The Giant keeps it held in until the referee reaches 4 on his 5 count. Andre chokes Hogan again and Dave Hebner is once again forced to break the hold, and now it looks like the Hulkster is in big trouble. Hogan takes a big right hand and he falls into the corner. Andre whips Hulk to the other side of the ring and Hulk crumbles to the mat. A loud Hogan chant is broken out as Andre stands on Hogan's fingers before delivering a body slam. Andre continues to destroy Hulk with knee strikes, punches, a few chops, and a big boot from Andre sends Hulk to the outside while also sending Andre himself to the mat. Virgil throws Hogan back into the ring and Andre continues to choke the WWF champion. He even wraps his big singlet around Hulk's neck to do more damage, but the fans are still behind Hulk here and they try to get their hero back into the match. Another chokehold from Andre leads to Hogan hulking up, the roof comes off the Market Square Arena, and the Hulkster goes on the attack. After a few chops and punches, Hogan finally takes the Giant down with a middle rope clothesline. We then see the leg drop, but the referee gets distracted by Virgil. Hogan confronts the referee, but this gives Andre a chance to grab the Hulkster, land a few headbutts, and then Hulk takes the underhook suplex. 1, 2, 3. Andre the Giant wins the match to the shock of everyone in attendance. Hulk clearly got his shoulder up, but the referee says the match is over. Hulk Hogan just lost the championship, and there seems to be a whole lot of confusion inside the arena. Dave Hebner grabs the WWF Championship belt on the outside. He walks around the ring. Andre gets presented with the belt, and during a brief interview with Mean Gene Okerlund, Andre gives the belt to Ted DiBiase. The heels leave the ring and they laugh at Hulk Hogan. Vince McMahon and Jesse Ventura wonder if WWF President Jack Tunney will allow DiBiase to keep the belt, but one thing is for sure, Hulk Hogan just lost the championship in the most watched American wrestling show in history. We then get an explanation of sorts when two Dave Hebners appear in the ring. They both argue, and it looks like one Hebner isn't happy with the other. It turns out that Dave's evil twin brother Earl was also bought by the $1 Million Man, and after getting his head totally melted by this revelation, the Hulkster works out which one is the evil Hebner when Earl attacks Dave. This leads to Earl getting lifted in the air and thrown out of the ring, and it doesn't look like Hebner's fall was broken much by the $1 Million Team either. The crowd then cheer for the Hulkster, but the realization then begins to slowly set in. Hulk Hogan is no longer the WWF Champion. Strikeforce and the Hart Foundation are in the ring ready for the next match, but we cut over to Mean Gene Okerlund and Hulk Hogan in the locker room. The Hulkster is clearly taking this loss very bad. Hogan thinks this is the work of a plastic surgeon. Not once does he think that Dave Hebner could have a twin brother. Instead, he's completely convinced that Ted DiBiase paid a ton of money for a plastic surgeon to make a total stranger look like Dave Hebner. Fucking brilliant. Hulk screams for his Hulkamaniacs at the end of the promo.
Vince McMahon, Jesse Ventura, back to you.
And then poor Strikeforce and the Hart Foundation have to try to have a match after the whole Hogan vs Andre debacle. As stated earlier, the match gets cut off. We only see about 10 seconds worth of action, but if you've ever wondered how Strikeforce won this match, well, here you go. I've no idea why they still sent these guys to the ring with such little TV time remaining, but well, there you have it. The main event was in the books, and no American wrestling show since has had more viewers. So, was it actually any good? It depends on what way you look at it, really. Die-hard wrestling fans will probably say no, and it's pretty obvious why. 2 matches, and neither match was a technical masterpiece. But what you have to remember here, even more so than Saturday night's main event, is that this show was not made to appeal to die-hard wrestling fans. It was for the general primetime TV audience across the whole United States. Even Honky Tonk Man and Randy Savage hammed it up a little more than usual, and as for Hulk vs Andre, they told the most simple of stories that anyone could grasp. The theatrics at the end with the 2 Hebners is further proof of this. Anyone can point and laugh at 2 identical referees, no matter what TV show or what sport they're watching. You don't need to watch wrestling to understand what was happening. It's an 80s wrestling show that's supposed to appeal to the masses, and so for that reason, you could say it worked well. For those wanting to sit back and enjoy an action-packed wrestling show, you won't find it here, unfortunately. Andre handing the title to Ted DiBiase is pretty iconic, and it's a historically significant moment that everyone should see, but the rest of the show you can easily skip and you won't miss much. There's better Randy Savage and Honky Tonk Man matches out there also. Still, no other wrestling show has came close to the viewership this one gained in the United States, on network TV and on cable. It was all about Vince McMahon showing new potential customers what the WWF was all about, and McMahon thought the entertainment side of things was more important than the wrestling on February 5th, 1988. Whether he made the right call or not is completely up to you. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.